My heart is open. Thank you, Mario, and thank you, guys, and thank you, Angela. Wow, I'm ready. Are you? Last week was a really awesome Sunday. Something extraordinary happened here. Our spiritual community donated $100,000 to Unity World Headquarters to support the Unity work around the world. And it is extraordinary because each time we give generously, happily, abundantly, we're really opening the gates of heaven to everyone. Reverend Jim Rosemergy, who's one of my favorite Unity ministers, says that the greatest demonstration of our prosperity consciousness is not how much we're able to manifest, but how much we're able to give. So definitely, this is a very prosperous community in terms of what we're able to give. Even so impressed with the backpack drive to know that 5,700 kids will have a better back to school, not only in Florida. I learned that it has to do with kids in Haiti, Puerto Rico, that we will support their education somehow by the generous spirit of this church. And it really speaks to our alignment with divine nature, because our nature in our divinity is to give and to bless and to be the presence. People come to Unity, I don't know what the case might be, but many of us come here seeking because we have not been fulfilled somehow, maybe in our religion of origin. Many of us come out of a crisis and we need help. Many of us come looking for a spiritual home that can provide practical tools to help us grow and cope with life. And many of us have seen tangible results after we have joined and practiced this way of life. I don't know if you're familiar, but Unity has 3 core teachings. The first one, and not in any order, but guidance, healing, and prosperity. And all these teachings are grounded on spiritual truths that are way beyond the Unity philosophy. They're really universal truths that are found in many religions. And the co-founders of this movement, Charles and Myrtle, discovered them not because they studied world religion, but because they experienced the power and the presence through the healing that Myrtle had. This is why this philosophy is so practical. Myrtle Fillmore, as you know, healed miraculously from a tuberculosis condition after being told that she had 6 months to live. And after she had this healing, and they studied every religion of the world, they decided to make this discovery the purpose of their lives, to make this work their life's work. And for a moment, think about it. 2 Midwestern Americans with hardly any education or any financial wealth created a movement that is worldwide 100 years later. And as they made the decision of doing this work, I don't know if you're familiar, but they did a covenant between Myrtle and Charles. I would like to show you that and just read you briefly what the covenant said. We, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, husband and wife, hereby dedicate ourselves, our money, our time, all we have and we expect to have, to the Spirit of Truth, and through it to the Society of Silent Unity. It is being understood and agreed that the said Spirit of Truth shall render into us an equivalent for this dedication in peace of mind, health of body, wisdom, understanding, love, life, an abundant supply of all things necessary to meet every want without making any of these things the object of our existence. They signed this in the presence of conscious mind of Christ Jesus on the 7th day of December, 1892. Think about it. How were they able, without any government grant, without any healthy, wealthy uncle inheritance, to be able to rely completely on spirit to bring forth a message of this nature, and to trust that each step, each stage of the work, somehow they were going to be financed. Again, think about completely depending on God to come forth as they dedicated themselves fully to this mission. It's what in my former church, our kids, we used to show them the frog, fully relying on God. And they used the frog as their essence to start this work. It started with Society of Silent Unity. Then they went into, which was essentially praying for others. Then did the publications like Daily Word, and ultimately started creating centers, trusting again fully that whatever it took was going to show up. And it did. And that just speaks about the outstanding faith of these people. How many of you would say that you have been transformed? Any of us say, oh, unity transformed my life. I couldn't live without these principles. And without the commitment of these two human beings, simple, nothing, without much education or money, but a heart and a commitment to do this work, how our lives have been touched. And I was thinking also about almost 100 years ago, this Unity on the Bay was founded by a woman who had the same vision. What formula did Charles and Myrtle Fillmore use? What are the ingredients of that formula that managed to grow this movement through every financial crisis? Think about it. They started in the late 1800s. There was World War I, there was the Great Depression, there was World War II, and all the other economic crises. And they managed to keep growing and keep doing this work. What is that formula about? Today, as we hear and as we face the impact of inflation, I know it has not been fun paying $5 or $6 per gallon for gas. It's so easy to go into the awareness or fear of scarcity, of thinking there's not going to be enough, without knowing spiritual truth that can really impact you, and it can maybe have you toss and turn at night wondering, where is this all leading to? And if you're in that mindset and believe that economic conditions will dictate your well-being, then yes, you're going to be worried. You're going to be concerned. But like the Fillmores, they had a mindset that kept them stable, kept them safe, kept them prosperous. A mindset that I believe is what the Unexpected Income Program is trying to develop. You're familiar with it. People pray and create an abundance and an awareness of abundance, and somehow income shows up. In a way, it feels a little like transactional, but like many of us come with a specific need looking for help. And when we start seeing that, oh, there's somehow a connection between my thinking, my awareness, and my worldly conditions, then we start paying attention. So again, this magic formula, and I know that prosperity consciousness is not all about money. And in Unity, we know it's the overall well-being in every area of our lives. But today I would like to be specific about our financial well-being. And I would like to talk to you about a specific core idea that really I have taken to almost an experiment of the validity of how these principles work. And I'm going to just share that from personal experience and a personal story. I would like to start off by saying that as I share this particular story, it's probably one of the worst economic crises I have gone through in my earthly life. And it's interesting because I had been already probably 15 years into ministry. I started being exposed to unity principles when I was 13. I studied 4 years, intense studying as licensed unity teacher and then minister. I put a lot of these principles into practice in my business. And still, I must say that when I faced a situation, it was not enough. I went into that mindset of what's going to happen, who's going to take care of me, there's not enough, and so on. And believe me, I would get up and say, God is the source of our well-being and abundance itself, and it is our consciousness of God that supplies. And the channels might change, but the source, it's unchanging. And being gratitude and give from that space, and still when that happened, I was freaking out. It was 2011. I find myself without any source of income, sick, seriously sick. My extended family, we were in serious conflict. And I was not able to get out there and maybe get to work because I was in intense treatment for cancer. So all the places or all the people or circumstances that I had relied before were not accessible to me at that moment. Life placed me in a situation where I had to fully rely on Spirit. During those days, I remember having breakfast with a minister friend of mine who was telling me, you know, and at some point, she had been in Unity many years, and she said, at some point, I told myself, I'm going to test to see if what we teach in Unity is really true. And and then she said, because if it isn't, I'm just quitting being a minister. And I went, oh my God, I'm going to do the same. At this very moment where I just don't see a horizon, I'm going to test this. And before I tell you, go into further details, I would like to just say, what is it that I was really testing? I was testing this idea of God being a reliable source. I was testing this idea that Jim Rosemary talks about, God being the source and the consciousness of God being the supply. And years ago, Reverend Jim used an example that it was so well explained, and I'm going to explain it to you. Imagine that the candle represents all of God's potentiality of good in your life. And you know that a candle has been created really to give light. But the only way that this candle can work and fulfill its function is by having the wick lit. Without the wick, the candle cannot do what it was created to do. The wick represents our consciousness of God. There can be all the potentiality for good, for abundance in your life, but if there's not an awareness, a consciousness, like the wick, doesn't matter how much you scream and fight and complain, it's not going to happen. So then the question becomes, okay, I'm following you. How do I develop that consciousness? How do I make sure that I have the wick? And think about it for a moment. How would I do that? And I would say the very first thing we need to be aware of is prayer. When we pray, by affirming what is, we are building that consciousness of God. But when our prayer gets centered on our needs, it's not going to be as effective because you are placing awareness on what you are lacking. And by the law of mental action, whatever you're giving power to is going to keep manifesting more needs, more needs. But the more you shift your awareness and make prayer and affirmative work based on truth, it's like, for illustration purposes, imagine that this is a wick. So each time you and I do affirmative prayer, affirming there's enough, there's plenty, God is the source, it's like we extend the wick. But when we go and put our awareness into what's lacking, it's like almost, if I may use a scissors, it's like, now that you're saying there's enough, there's enough, there's enough, there's enough, oh no, there's not, I'm worried how my needs going to be fulfilled, it's like the wick becomes smaller and smaller. And what happens is that with whatever wick, this is how much Spirit can work for you. And what happened with me through this experience is that I became, in the midst of that situation, I became really affirmative, trying to manage my mind and say, the world does not supply me. God is the source of my supply, the way the Fillmores did it. And I started seeing miracles, literally miracles of abundance happening. Another thing that we can do, so prayer is the first one that extends the wick. Another thing that I had to do was to do a lot of forgiveness work. Situation was very tense with my family, who was not, I really wanted to walk out of the family business, and there was resistance, and I wanted to move forward in my spiritual path. So there was a lot of manipulation and control over money, so I was really hurt, and of course, and I realized that if I kept seeing myself as victim and giving power and making them the source of my well-being, I was just going to let that wick become shorter and shorter. When we forgive, the wick expands. When we resent, it doesn't. And I really, I was telling a friend of mine, it's like when really you're triggered and that ego feels, makes you, convinces you that you're really a victim, you need to be like, think of the ego like a monkey, and you have to give a banana to the monkey and let the monkey go back to its cage and stay quiet, because you don't have a place in here. The third aspect of growing a consciousness of God has to do, think about it, prayer, affirming what is true, forgiveness, staying in the frequency of love, wick expands, then the flow can keep coming, and then it's like what? Think for a moment, what else? It's the giving and the tithing. I had tithed before this moment. I was maybe 80% tithing, but I told myself, okay, if God is the source of your good and you're in partnership and God comes first, then you have to be in agreement and in alignment with your action. It's not like, okay, God is the source, I forgive, and then no. Giving, I don't know, I'm not sure. Then you're not really convinced, your consciousness is not fully there. So I started, whatever, I was not getting any income, but I said, whatever comes to me, I'm just going to give the 10%. And as I was in Puerto Rico about to move to North Carolina, I had called this friend of mine who was a massage therapist, and she had come to support me through the chemo bad days. And I wanted to thank her, and I made this meal for her, and I wanted to give her a really special gift, even though I didn't have much funding. But I said, I'm going to make her a sofrito kit, the way we cook in Puerto Rico that has all the seasoning, and I had a recipe. And I said, she's an American, and she's been in the island 20 years. And I said, I know you've been here forever. You don't know how to cook Puerto Rican, so I figure this would be a good opportunity for you too, and there you go. Now, prior that week, I had sold some gold that I had, that a friend of mine had told me, hey, you can generate some cash by selling some gold, and I had made $2,000. And I questioned, gosh, if I'm going to be tithing, I have to do the 200. The rational mind, like, well, you need the 2,000. How are you going to give the 200? And again, I went back to prayer, back to truth, and I said, okay, no, God is the source, and I'm going to give in trust this $200. Then Susan comes along, my friend. I serve her dinner. We have a great time. And then she hands me an envelope. And she says, this one is for you. And I said, what is it? And she says, remember I was married to an Egyptian, and I used to live part of our marriage in North Carolina. And I had told myself, one day I'm going to hand this engagement ring for a special reason, and I was just moved to give this to you. And she gave me that. And I made like 4 times the $200 that I had. And I'm like, oh my God, the consciousness is really supplying. We moved to North Carolina. My husband at the time, the job was not, no, it wasn't a great job, but it was a start. And it was in sales, commission-based. And I'm keeping my experiment. I'm going like, okay, I'm relying on God. I'm doing my affirmative work. I'm doing my forgiveness work. And I'm tithing. Everything that comes to me comes from the same source, and I give out of that truth. So that week, he made $150. What do you do with $150, a family of 5? And I remember looking at him and say, we have 2 choices here. Either we give thanks for the $150 we didn't have yesterday, or we see the $150 as the sign of scarcity and we go into fear. And if we really believe, we need to tithe the $15 on the $150, which we did. And we chose that. We chose truth. Well, the prior week, a minister friend of mine from New York had called me to check on me and see how I was doing. And we got engaged in this beautiful conversation, and I ended up cheering her up. And she was so moved that she decided on sending me her tithe that month. And that very same week that we had accepted and blessed $150, I opened the mailbox, and there was a check of almost $500. And at that very moment, I went, I get this. It is the consciousness of God. I could not work. It was like I have to rely purely on spirit. We had acquired some debt up to like $8,000 on credit card. When I finally got the job at Unity of the Triangle as an associate, I'm like, I called another minister, a friend of mine, and I told her, hey, I've been tithing, but maybe now that maybe I can do 5% to the church and 5% to lower the debt. And you know what she said to me? Sure. If you want to give somebody else the power and put somebody else first, go ahead. And they went, no. And I said, okay, I'm going to keep tithing. When the tax season came along, this is all true story. We filed for taxes, and we got a refund for $9,000. And like another friend of mine told me, hey, did you see that God tied back to you? You paid off the $8,000, and I still had $1,000 left. And I could spend the rest of the day sharing stories from that period that really showed me that my faithfulness to these principles, to the awareness of truth, backed up by action, was really true. And this is how the Fillmores really built this movement. What the teachings was precisely how they funded, placing God first. So we could even say, and I want you to get this clear, God is my source, and the consciousness of God is my supply. And when I act from there with prayer, affirmative prayer, forgiveness. Forgiveness part is key. And tithing, we will see that we are untouchable. There's nothing out there. I don't care what the inflation, I don't care. I already know this is truth. So if you see yourself afraid, might be that you're starting a new business, might be that you're changing careers, might be that something happened at your job. I don't care what it is. Whatever economic fluctuation cannot hurt you unless there's consciousness fluctuation. The more conditioned, we have to realize that the collective consciousness is one of scarcity. This is why there's so much greed, there's so much control, there's so much attachment to money. And we have to overcome that by our own spiritual work. And the more afraid we get, the more we need to, and this is what happened to me. I was like, oh, I knew this, and still I was freaking out because I realized at the time that I had a lot of faith that, yeah, consciousness of God is my supply, but it's like my father or the business is my security. And life placed me in a situation to show me that it's not true. If that is your case now, go ahead, be my guest, test it. At the end of the day, and this is how I would like to end, that the big value and the big blessing of having this sense of security and safety by placing God as our source and putting God first. The real blessing is that when we are fear-free, when we don't get freaked out by how our needs are going to be met, all this energy is being freed to create, to serve, and to go deeper spiritually. This is why I believe that the Maslow hierarchy postulates you can never go and pay attention to your self-realization needs if your survival needs are not being met. So beyond meeting your needs to cope with life and feel safe, it's about going beyond that and saying, now that I know I can really be in a position to be of service, be in a position to go deeper spiritually. Because at the end of the day, this is what's going to stay. What is it that in this earthly plane you manage to acquire and understand? So that is my wish to you, that you may do some experiment. It will not be faithful to these principles, and the principles will not ever let you down. This is how Charles and Myrtle built this movement. And I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for you. And so it is. Amen.
Now I want a sofrito kit. Who else, right? Oye, side hustle, Reverend Anna. Hay gente que quieren el sofrito kit. We start selling some of them. I'm just saying. Who heard what they needed to hear? Yes, yes, yes. I want to give a big shout out to Rasan, who's watching from Vegas. Hello, Rasan. We love you. And also Michael Rhodes. All the people that are online watching services, we love you. We adore you. We see you doing big things. So, Miss Anna, fantastic message. What did you learn today, Faye? Thank you for asking, Unity on the Bay. I learned so much. God, frog. I love that. I love frogs. Right? Aren't they cute little animals? Frog, fully relying on God. And that's where faith is based from. I learned to have faith right here at Unity on the Bay. Like you said, you come in here, you might come in here broken. You might come in here in crisis, looking for others just like you. And you find it right here. So don't be a candle looking to get lit. We got your matches right here. Right? Right? With prayer, forgiveness, and tithing, we are really untouchable. Isn't that incredible? Who wants to be untouchable? Yes. Yes. Incredible message. Please give Reverend Anna another round of applause. I love learning so much about you, Reverend Anna. It's going to be an interesting journey, isn't it? Right? So excited. So here at Unity on the Bay, we believe in the law of giving and receiving. And now is your chance to give in gratitude. We encourage you to go green by texting GIVE to 833-245-5645. That's 833-245-5645. Folks, the info is behind me. Folks at home, it's right on your screen. But if you need an envelope, we also have our ushers walking around. Yes, we have Nick with his sexy legs walking around. If you need an envelope, raise your hand and he will hook you up. I'm going to give you a couple of moments in silence to prepare your gift. We thank you for your gifts. Let's bless these gifts together. You can hold your hand to your heart or your gift to your heart. Divine love, that I am. Blessed is all that I give and all that I receive. Let's take a moment to bless the incredible children that are right now in the kids zone. Let's get those hands together. My hands were a little sweaty. What was eso? All right. Children, we love you. We bless you. We appreciate you. We behold the Christ in you, and we see you doing great things. Remember that we're here to pray with you. We're here to pray for you. If something came up during Reverend Anna's message, don't go home with it, okay? We've got you. I'm going to invite the prayer chaplains to come on up, and please grab them after service if you just want to sit down for a couple of minutes, okay? And so with that, I want to give a big special thank you to Mario Smith for being our incredible soloist today. And of course, the rest of our Unity on the Bay music ministry, Dale Stein, Ruth, George, Anthony, incredible. Angela Ribeiro, who did an incredible meditation today. Thank you, Mama. Thank you. And my Boricua queen, Reverend Anna Quintana. Please give it up for her. And I'm going to invite her up to the platform for our prayer for protection, followed by our peace song.
Breathe in, breathe out with me, and just feel the abundance flowing forth. I affirm and I say that, and together we say, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And so it